it's a new era, right? I think at the last training meetup I did, I was trying to put this idea out. I wish there were a couple other school owners there too, so I could get their feedback and thoughts on this, because very much the responsibility flows in the opposite direction of the money, right? So
Okay.
I feel like there's a certain generation of martial artists who lives in this world, in this place where they're straddling both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day when you didn't pay for instruction, so your obligations were myriad and deep,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, from whatever, sweeping the dojo to bringing them lunch,
Sure.
right? And
Yeah.
but now we just take money. So all of a
I don't
sudden,
know about this we thing, because
Well-
I sweep the floor a lot here.
well, and that's exactly what I mean, though. Because you take money, now it's your job to sweep the floor. It's not the student's job. They're giving you money, right?
So
I'm not, you can, you
Now,
feel free
obviously-
to disagree with me.
no. So I mean, I'm taking this as you're obviously meaning like as a culture,
Yeah.
not necessarily a specific my school. Now
Yeah,
I can comment to how my school handles that, and because we all sweep the floor here.
Yeah.
But I there definitely is somewhat of that element. You know, when I used to do seminars with Taika Seiyu Oyata, one of the things that was unique to me about his seminars is that you would go to one of his seminars, and like his senior students, you'd walk in and there would be a spread. His senior students would bring like donuts, muffins, coffee, milk, juice, water, sometimes lunch meats, and it was just like that was part of your seminar fee. And I'm not saying that should or shouldn't be that way. That's how that culture was.
Yeah.
And I noticed they were, and still are, that group is very tight knit. And I don't know if it's because of policies like that, or policies like that are reflections of the group being tight knit.
Yeah.
It could be either way. But I tell you what, like when it came time to break for lunch, you didn't see a lot of people split off. Back in those days, you didn't see a lot of people split off into their separate places to go eat.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, they hung around the craft table, if you want to call it that, and they talked and got to know each other and tried not to get stuff on their uniforms, and it was a good time. Now, I mean, you've seen this. You and I have done this. We've been at seminars, not really know anybody, and like all of a sudden, 40 people all converge on the same Subway or Jimmy John's or Panera's, and we all sit in our own separate little tables, and nobody talks to each other except for like the so.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like when you talk about stepping on landmines, I think people are still trying to figure out what the modern martial arts culture is for traditional martial arts, right? Like kickboxing and MMA gyms have adapted very readily, right? It tends to be a lot more casual, tends to draw a different kind of consumer. Whereas people who are joining a place that, looks like a dojo that Danny LaRusso would come check out, they are perhaps still expecting some of that, because that actually adds value, right?
Yeah.
And whether that's a misconception or a fetishization, they know they're looking for something other than just, here's my money, show me some cool stuff. But at the same time, they're showing you their money just so you can show them some cool stuff. And so these relationships are changing, right?
Yeah, I think that ultimately it becomes like I don't know about the money thing necessarily. I'm always trying to learn more about the business side of things, because truth be told, I'm not the greatest businessman. I love teaching. I think I'm a good teacher. I don't know that I'm an amazing teacher, but I think I'm a good teacher. I can get people from A to B, and I can do it in a way that they enjoy the journey, and that they learn something more than just martial arts from the journey, but they still got to be able to perform. The business side of it, it's something that I actually reach out to other martial arts school owners and say, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you deal with this situation? Because, I taught for a long time for free. I taught for a long time out of like the local Parks and Recreation,
Sure.
which was almost for free. I taught out of my home, out of my garage for 10 years. I think 10 years for almost for free, and I didn't really have to like start getting into being a businessman until we saw this uptick of interest. And in order to reach out and help more people, it means I need more resources. I need a bigger place. I need equipment to be able to get things online. I need to be able to reach out. And that requires greater financial resources. So it's sort of like when you go to a seminar and some people say, oh, I would never pay $200 for a seminar. That's insane. And, I sort of look at it and I go, okay, let's take, since we've both met each other at Guru Dan seminars, let's take Guru Dan, for instance, and say, all right, well, I know that it was not free for Guru Dan to, fly to Thailand and stay there and learn. I know it was not free for Guru Dan to bring in people from, like Silat instructors and bring in people from the Philippines, and for him to get that information to pass on to me. And if I look at it in comparison of what he had to overcome both financially and with geography and, donating his own time into learning the material to pass it along to me, $200 is really kind of a drop in the bucket in comparison, So I try to look at things as more of like investment versus sacrifice. What am I getting from this versus what am I giving up?
Yeah.
And, when it comes to the culture of martial arts and, hey, I'm giving you money for this or that, I look at it this way. I give you money when I go to learn from my instructors. I give you money for your time and for what I perceive to be of value for you to give back to me. Now, if I feel what you're giving back to me is not of value, I'm free to stop giving you money, right? You are free to value what you have to offer to whatever you value it as, right? I've also found that students who pay for something versus students who you give it to for free, they're different mindsets. And typically, the guys that are for free, they'll take something without giving anything back, and then they're gone. Versus the people that they recognize an investment in order to make that money. Especially for me, when I'm paying for my lessons too, right? Yeah. I have to spend the time to make the money, and that money, that's basically receipts of time spent that I'm handing another person.
Well, but I think especially at to tie this back into the online university discussion.
Okay. I might have got a little off track.
No. I think because you're paying for their time, but one thing that can be misinterpreted, or maybe there's not a meeting of the minds on this. The knowledge is now yours. It's not theirs anymore. You've paid for it. And so
this is a topic that has gotten me in trouble numerous times.
Well, that's why I kind of, I kind of want to talk about it and also tell you that I sympathize with it because the world's changing. Right? People had an older set of values.
Yeah.
Right. But now it's just changing. Right. The knowledge is yours. You can do with it as you please. You could teach for free at the beach 7 days a week if you were independently wealthy, and that's just what you like to do. Right. Well, you could call it Kent Kun Do, or as my wife calls it, Jeet Kune Bing.
You could do it, Kent Kun Do.
You could do whatever the hell you wanted because the knowledge is yours, not theirs anymore. But I anticipate this causes some friction.
Causes and probably has caused.
Yeah.
I know that I ran into situations in the beginning of before I understood this concept even existed. Right. I know I went to seminars and was shown something in a seminar, like not shown directly to me, shown to 50 people all at once. Like, okay, we're going to do this thing. Okay. And so I go home and I work it, and I get it down. And then I do, somebody comes to me and wants to learn something. So I show it to them, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you can't give away my stuff, right? That's an interesting concept, and I realize I'm running the risk of shooting myself in the foot here as well. But the reality of it is it's all about perception. My father, who's a very pragmatic person, my father would look at that and say, that's your knowledge. You bought that knowledge. You can do with that knowledge what you want. Another person might say, I don't want you passing that out, because you don't have the depth of the understanding of it yet. You're not representing it like it should be represented. Or, I'm not necessarily saying this out loud, but you're representing me because I showed you that, and you're not showing it in a way that I would want somebody to see it. Does that make sense?
Oh no, and this is, let's contrast this now for every other kind of knowledge that exists. Okay, if you go to a massage school, do they give you crap for massaging someone before you're ready? I have a degree in math and physics. I did not do as well as maybe I could have, but does my old calculus teacher tell me, why are you tutoring calculus? You don't know calculus the way you should. No, that's rubbish, right? But for some reason, martial arts culture and certain other very specific things they want to hold on to it more. Yeah. And maybe back when this was keeping your village alive, that was a valid criticism, but you're teaching commercially now. You can elect to stop showing. If you have that big of a problem with it, just stop showing people, man. That's how you fix that problem.
Well, I would agree with that. So I think you're right when you say like different values, like in older values. I almost hesitate with the term older values, even though they are older values. I hesitate with the term older values because that almost gives it a ring of being a less legitimate value for some reason, like older, outdated, not useful. And I don't think that's entirely true. But I think that as a teacher, then you're maybe responsible for saying ahead of time, hey, listen, I'm going to show you this. You're welcome to do what you want with it, but if I see you teach publicly with this, you and I are done. That way I've given you the choice before I just drop the hammer on you or leave you to make a decision with no information whatsoever. You know, the thing that I always find interesting about martial arts is that there is this unwritten rule book with martial arts, right? And the only way you come to discover the rules in the rule book is that you only get to know them as you break them. Right? You're going along fine, and then all of a sudden somebody's mad at you because you did something that nobody ever told you about anyways. You go, oh gosh, I guess I can't do that. I'll write that down in my rule book.
Oh, and this is and this is something that I've always found amusing because as someone who maybe has a little more access to East Asian culture, we have to remember that the martial arts rule book is an appropriation and fetishization of the perception of the original core values. You are mimicking values that you didn't grow up with, that were given to you, just like you're mimicking the movements that were given to you. You didn't grow up with those set of values if you learned martial arts in America, right? So I find it amusing when people who are, quite frankly, not East Asian or didn't grow up there, let's say, because you can be Caucasian and grow up in Japan and be super Japanese, except maybe not because they're super racist. But, he said that. I didn't say that. I may or may not cut that. But these are values that you think you know the same way you think you know Lopsao works. You think you know the correct way to bow and where to sit at the table and kind of how much money to give in the red packet, for a more Chinese-centered audience. These are things that you think you know, and so you think you know the unspoken rule book.
I've probably tripped over more of those than the majority of the people I know.
No, but I just want to point out that those are not even your rules. Those are just rules that you made up.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, something that I see in I've encountered this with several instructors over the years. Way before I got into the JKD Kali community, I was heavily into Japanese martial arts as well, and I encountered it there quite a lot. Was there, and I don't know that it exists as much today. Maybe it does. I'm not sure. But one of the things I appreciate about being in a group like I am today, like with Guru Dan or with like Sifu Rick Fei or Eric Paulson or those guys, is that they encourage you to succeed. They encourage you to, he says, be good at what you do and go make a living at it and let's keep these arts alive. Versus when I first started, there was a lot of like, we don't really want you shining outside of the group. Like it was to be under one person, like get a lot of guys out there that, they're teaching in, they either have their own school and they don't want you to shine, right? Or they are teaching out of racquetball courts, or they're teaching out of their basements, or they're teaching out of their garages, or whatever it might be, or their backyards. And I trained with a lot of those types of guys. and they get really mad or threatened or jealous when a student kind of starts to go off on their own a little bit. And I find, and that is typically when you start to see those unwritten rules start to come up.
Also, so final question, your thoughts on succession planning?
Succession planning for myself or
for these organizations you're all part of, for local teachers who run into this problem? What would be your advice for intelligent succession planning?
Well, I see that one thing that I hate using the term. A lot of people use the term McDojos, right? And I understand the concept behind it. I think a lot of times Taekwondo gets a bad rep for being McDojos, and sometimes I think it's earned, But I have a few friends that run schools that, for lack of a better term, they've franchised, and that's where I think the term McDojo comes from, right?
Sure.
But you look at some like a fantastic instructor like Sifu Rick Fei. He's franchised to MKG. I think that the key is for succession is look at students and don't just look at them as these are ways to make money. Don't just look at them as these are people to be underneath me, so I feel like I'm on a higher mountain, right? Look at them as like these are people that it's my job to help them become a success. And I think anytime you are integral in helping a person become better and to grow as a person, I think that just forms a tighter relationship, a tighter bond. And if you can get that person to a place where they want to open up a school, encourage that, help them out. I know if one of my students were to be like, hey, I think I'm moving to so and so to such and such a place, and I think I want to maybe open up a KSK branch, or I think I want to do my own thing, right? If I love that student, and I've put my heart and soul into them, I know them to be a good person, I'm going to support that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, hey, go check out Guru Larry Mouton's wrestling camp. I trained with him for years. He's a great guy. One thing I've noticed is that I've had a lot of instructors over the years. I do these weapons camps, and I never see like any of my instructors like pump my weapons camps. And I always think that's really strange to me because I think, wow, wouldn't you want to see your students succeed? But again, that's everybody's personal choice. I don't need them to pump me. But I know how that feels, and I know that I'm going to make a choice that when my students raise up to those success levels, I'm going to do my best to support them.